Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Happy summer. Hope everyone is having a great start to their week. I know I'm so excited for this session, and so I'm so excited that you all are here. So, happy Tuesday. We have a lot of things going on. If you are new to Lady Titans, welcome. We are so glad that you are here. This is our Spotlight series. So, we host a Spotlight series once a month, every month, where we bring in a guest, a speaker, to kind of share some insight and share some knowledge with what they have going on and what they can all offer. So we're always looking to add value to our Lady Titans members and community. And so this is one of those meetings. So excited that you're here. But we also have our Lady Titans Lounge once a month, which is our completely unscripted. There's no designated speaker, there's no designated agenda, but that is just a safe space for women to be like, hey, has anybody ever done this? Or I'm really struggling with this inside of Service Titan or inside of our HR employee handbook, or has anyone ever wrote an SOP for this? That's what the Lady Titans Lounge is designed to do. And I can tell you, we have solved so many of the world's problems in the lounge. It is incredible. So if you have not been able to join us for that, make sure that you have that on your calendar. We can go to ladytitans.org and you can sign up so that stays on your calendar every single month. So, but I'm so excited to have everyone here. I know summertime is in full swing. It's always a busy month for everyone, just busy season being in the home service fields, but so glad that you carved out time today. I know our two speakers today will make it worth your time. So today we have back by popular demand and back requested for them to be together. We have Danielle Wernert with Upskilled Consulting and Roslyn Fitzgibbons with Moxie, and they have each spoken individually and they each have their own incredible background and insight, but they have a shared love of building an internal training academy. And how can you gear up and train internally to set your company up for success? And so I'm not going to steal all their thunder. I'm going to turn it over to them to let them each talk about themselves individually, but also building a training academy. It's something really special, really unique, and they are the experts in it. So Danielle, Rosalind, thank you guys so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. Yes, this is a topic that is very, very near and dear to my heart. So super quick intro about me if I've not met you. I got started in the industry about 8 years ago at Peterman Brothers out here in the Midwest and had the opportunity of creating their internal training academy. So you'll hear us talk a lot about like the why and building future generations of talent. And I learned a lot through that experience, fell on my face a lot, learned a lot of what don't do and a lot of what to do. And now I have the luxury of being able to do that as my full-time job. So I started Upskilled Consulting a few years ago. Now I help contractors across the country build their own training academies. So hopefully, if you guys have questions, that between Roz and I, we will be able to support you with all of the answers.
So fantastic.
Awesome. All right. I'm Rosalind Fitzgibbons. If you have not met me before, weren't on the last time, I am from Moxie, consulting and coaching. However, in a previous life, not so long ago, just back in January, I was at ECO. My brother and I started that company in 2007. 19 years later, there's 400 employees, 300 of those are trucks, four verticals, and one university that was near and dear to my heart. One day, my brother said, "Hey, we've got to build a school." And as the integrator, I was like, "All right, let's get to work." And we set forth to build a university called EcoU. It's something I'm incredibly proud of being able to give those skills to the next generation. And so I'm thrilled to be sharing some of this information with you guys today.
Awesome. Well, we're so excited as well. Thank you guys for being here. And so take it away, Danielle. I know you have a presentation.
Yeah, awesome. So hopefully you guys can see my screen. I am, like I said, I could just talk about this for days and days. So hopefully we'll keep it high level for you guys to kind of see if this is something that makes sense for you and is something that you're interested in. And what does it look like from a small scale all the way to a full-blown academy, like your own trade school, if you will. So thank you for the opportunity of being able to be here and talk about this with you guys. So kind of opening up and talking about, building a technician academy. Sorry, I'm new to PowerPoint, so please forgive my human error in the computer world. So talking about kind of like the why. Why did we want to start a school? Why was it the right solution? And how did we know it was the right solution? I think you guys can all relate to, we keep hearing the labor shortage, the labor shortage. There's not enough people to run our calls. There's not enough technicians coming in. More people are retiring than people are entering the industry. And like, how do we solve it? So I tell people a lot when they start, voicing those complaints of there's not enough people. Well, what are you doing about it? Because if you're waiting for somebody to solve the answer for you, you're already behind. And that's kind of what we felt with the idea of this school. And so it was, hey, we want to grow our own talent. I want to be able to open my recruiting pool and stop fishing from the same barrel. Like I want to create my own pond, kind of, if you will. So being able to connect with that future generation, I tell people all the time, there is an interest out there. If you are willing to invest in training the people, we saw our recruiting pool open significantly, and people want to learn if you give them the right opportunities. And then I think for me, like the right timing, there's not like a one size fits all of like you have to be at this revenue or you have to be at this head count. I don't think there's like a box to kind of shove you into to know when the timing is right. The timing is right when you are trying to figure out where your next technician's coming from and your Indeed's drying up and we've got more service calls than we're able to run. To me, like those were all key factors of the right timing. And then I'll kind of let Roz kind of chime in with her thoughts on their right timing.
Similar, yeah. We were passing technicians back and forth between each company. We were not finding the skilled labor that we needed, and particularly not in the mass amount that we were needing to do maintenance calls as you're gearing up and selling memberships. Now all of a sudden you've got to fulfill them, and just again the community in itself and competition. So again, agree with Danielle 100%. There's no exact right timing to put like a number to it. Oh, it's when you're 20 million, build a school. It's definitely demand. Like your business will be screaming for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest questions that I get asked when people are like, okay, well, yeah, that sounds like a great idea, but like, how much does it cost me? And again, you're probably going to hear this echoed a lot through this presentation. Like, there's not a one size fits all. It's really, really going to vary on what you are capable of investing in. And again, starting small and ramping up to a larger program. But I think there is some startup costs that are worth considering. And part of those kind of on the left side there, you can see like, what does that space, that training space look like? I actually just finished a project with a client who they were like, we absolutely don't have the money or the space for a dedicated training space. Everything has to be done in the field. And while there's pros and cons to every scenario, we were able to say, okay, well, that eliminates this cost. What does it look like now? So even if it's just picking a section of your warehouse and saying, okay, this is going to be our dedicated training space, it comes with costs. And so navigating that, your equipment, your tools, your curriculum, and we'll dive into curriculum a little bit deeper soon, but that knowledge has to come from somewhere. If you just went to your best technician and said, "Hey, I want you to train people, you know how to do it," they're going to be like deer in the headlights. Like they have to have that resource and that supplemental material to help guide them through training. And oftentimes, if you said, "Here's PowerPoint, go ahead and build it from your brain," they really, really struggle to do that. So outsourcing that curriculum in some capacity. And again, we'll talk about that more. Your instructor, who's going to teach it, right? Like that's a salary. Are you taking your best technician out of the field? For some people, it works. For some people, it doesn't. What does your marketing and your recruitment look like and your administrative overhead? Are you paying for external, software? Somebody has to manage the program. Is that going to be your instructor as well? Because that's an entirely different skill set. So those are all kind of startup costs that you need to consider. And then, Rosal, did I forget anything, or is there anything burning in your brain?
And no, I think we covered it. That's
Okay.
a good bit of them. Yeah, that marketing expense you'll see shoot up, but there's clever ways to go about it by getting into the schools. And I think we talk about that a little bit in the recruiting, if I recall.
Yeah, definitely. There are some ways to offset the expenses. So I always tell people, like, I am never ever going to promise that you are going to get your program funded through sponsorships or grants. I am telling you that it can happen. I have personally been able to secure 600,000 in sponsorships and grants for training programs. So it exists. But again, I never promise anybody that, like, yes, you're going to get it all sponsored and it's all going to be free. There is an investment in there to some degree. But I do also think that the answer is no until you ask, right? Until you try and ask for that sponsorship or that partnership, it's always going to be $0 until you try. So it's worth trying, in my opinion. But there is another program called the Veteran Education Benefits that's run through the VA at your state level that is a really, really cool opportunity to help kind of offset for your candidates and your people going through your program. It doesn't necessarily help you fund the school, but a lot of those people that are coming and applying to your program, they're either fresh out of school and it's their first step into a career, or they're career changers. And if you're a career changer, you often have to take a pay cut because you're starting at the bottom with this entry level. So that VA program, for the people that qualify for it, it helps alleviate their personal funding while they're training. And so that's another resource that I would highly encourage you look into. All right. Moving on. These were some of like the five key, like frequently asked questions that we saw or that I get asked all the time. I will say, I started writing a book on like how to launch an academy because that was just something I was so passionate about. And I was like, okay, what are all of the questions or decisions that need made when you decide, yes, I'm going to open a training program? And there were over like 1,000 questions, ranging from like, as Roslyn would say, mission critical to the really granular details that like it doesn't really matter who makes the decision, but my gosh, a decision needs made. So there's so many different things that go into this, but these are probably the five key questions. And I'll let Roslyn jump in for her experience in any of these as well. But you'll notice there's not a specific number on any of these because again, it's gonna vary on your end goal and your capacity and what direction you choose to take your training program. But so how long until they graduate? That's probably the number one question that I hear is like, how long is it going to take? Because I need those technicians yesterday. And it really depends on what your end goal is. If you are trying to graduate them as a service technician who's going out and diagnosing and repairing, it's obviously going to take significantly longer. But a lot of times, like we designed these programs as maintenance, entry level positions. How do we get them doing heating, cooling tune-ups, plumbing inspections, those very entry level roles? I've seen anything from, 4 to 12 weeks is really kind of the sweet spot. Again, depending on what you want them to graduate with. So, and then end goal or end graduate, what are they capable of? A lot of times I tell people like we're gonna throw the flag at the end and we're gonna build this entire experience backwards. Like what do you need them to be able to do when they graduate? How do you know when the learning is done in this realm and they're ready to go out and essentially hand them keys to the truck on their own? So defining like what do you want them to be able to do when they graduate is really, really important. And that also correlates with number 4, like what certifications do they need? Are there federal or state mandated certifications that they have to have before you can hand them keys to the truck that needs to be incorporated into your program in some capacity? Roslyn, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, we set our program up initially to kind of have that, okay, it's 18 weeks. This is what it's going to look like. This is what we want. Maybe because teacher was a retired Marine. We thought of it as like basic training, almost like boot camp. And so you kind of had this intensive period where we're learning as much as we can through a structured environment. But as Danielle said, there's always going to be a continued education process that is happening. But when we think about what they need to get out of that initial boot camp or that coursework before we can level them up later, that's a great way to look at it is like, do I need more maintenance techs? Do I need more installers? What's market demand? What am I trying to train? And being flexible to know that one class might look different than the next. After running the program for about 2 years, we made a big pivot on how we did it and to solve a lot of different issues across the company that we were having, whether that be, replenishment or having 20 students start at once. I know that's one of our questions there is how many students per class? How many do you need? How many can you handle? What does retention look like for you? How quickly are you able to get those calls? Are you doing staggered starts for them once they graduate? All those factors kind of go into it. But for us, recruiting and getting 20 people to start at the same time on the same day could be a challenge. If anybody in this room is in HR, you're like, oh yeah, that sounds tough. It was tough. And we did it until we discovered, a better way. And we started kind of doing a rotation of like in every 6 weeks, a class would start as one was moving through the program, which was, incredibly helpful. So again, then that changed the timeline of how long they were in the class or how long they were in each section of the class, whether that was lab or in the truck. So a lot of different ways to kind of sort it out, I guess, depending on what your needs are, which is why somebody like Danielle who can help you think through it and structure it is important for sure.
It really is it's so challenging, and I don't say that lightly. I just say that because like I remember when I sat in that seat being so confused, and it's like every decision, I just said there's 1,000 decisions you make. Every decision is a fork in the road, and you're like, okay, I'm turning right this time, and then it takes you to a different question. You're like, okay, no, we're gonna turn left this time. So it's such a maze, it's such a puzzle. But I think one thing that's worth saying is that we've been talking all about technicians. And that's where, not to speak for Roslyn, but that's where like Roslyn and I really found our passion. And that's where this idea started. But I have seen some companies transition this topic to a CSR role or an in-house role. And how do you expedite it to be, a 2-week program or a 4-week program? So just because you hear us talking technician, don't think that that means that it's nothing for your office. Like you can take the same models and the same theories depending on what your business needs. But yeah, I think all of that to say there's so many FAQs, there's so many things to think about, and really there's kind of I start with the biggest, eat the elephant one bite at a time. Like what are the biggest, most important questions, and then navigate and trickle down, and more questions populate as you build your program,
Yeah.
essentially.
That last one's a good question. What's the success rate? While we did track graduation rates, and how successful they were, how many people actually stayed through the program, went out into the field, what were their KPIs as they started, and how did those progress? I will say a quick tidbit in this area when it comes to success is things that you think you might not teach them until later, front loading those to remove anybody who might fall off later. And to give a quick example of that would be driving the truck. And so you may not realize how many students end up feel fearful or have a issue driving the actual vehicle once they're put in it. And you're like, okay, we should probably teach that first. And so if in week 1 or 2, they just like cannot get the hang of driving the truck or feel safe, that's going to be their everyday vehicle, this isn't for them. So think about things like that as you build out programs, even just a simple onboarding program. Like, how comfortable are you driving these vehicles? Because it's a big change for a 19 or 20-year-old who's, joining the workforce. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah, we started implementing a driving rodeo for that very reason because those trucks are like boats with wheels sometimes. And it is like the first time I ever drove one, I was like, wait, where's my rear view mirror? It's just a metal wall behind me. What do I do? So yeah, 1,000% great call out. I will also say another just kind of quick story on the success rate. I remember being like, "Oh, I need 100% success. Like, I need 100% graduation rate. They all better graduate. We're investing time, we're investing money and resources in them. If they don't all graduate, that's lost resources, that's lost investment." And I found sometimes that 100% kind of takes the driver's seat, and then you find out, oh, well, did I want that 100 more than they were actually ready to graduate? And so you sometimes accidentally push people through. So just because you don't have a 100% graduation or a 100% success rate does not mean that it's a failing program. In my opinion, depending on where that range falls, it might mean that your program's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. So just something to keep in mind.
Well, and better to figure that out internally than when they're out in the field with an actual customer and then you're like, oh, they suck. We'd rather have a lower graduation rate and we figure that out before it gets in the hands of a customer.
Absolutely, absolutely. I will, and Roslyn will take lead on the recruiting slide and what that looks like, but I will just say like don't sugarcoat anything throughout any of the process. And while they're learning too. Like they need to see the good, the bad, and the ugly before they fully commit. So, yeah. Awesome. So we talk about starting small. Okay, like, yeah, Danielle, the idea of this full-blown academy with 20 students at a time sounds amazing, but I'm not ready for that. What do I do? And so I think it's worth talking about starting small and building your program. And I say personally, like, start with the onboarding process. Before you even think about an academy, are you in your business prepared to open the doors to anyone with any experience level for their onboarding and welcome them in? And what does that look like? Selfishly, like that was my Lady Titans session back in March. So if you were not there for that and that's like, hey, yes, this is where I want to start, like I'd recommend go start there or let me know and we can talk about it for sure. But making sure you've got a solid onboarding process from day one. And then you can say, okay, I want to build a training space, but I don't need to go buy the 20,000 square foot warehouse down the road. Like I've got space in my warehouse out back. Like what section can we spare and turn it into a small training lab? How do we build on that with a hybrid curriculum? How do we build on that in the field and invite our field mentors to be better trainers? And then full blown scaling it to a full academy. I think a lot of times we get caught in this. If it doesn't match that $100 million academy down the road, then is it worth doing? And yes, in my opinion, like, yeah, start small and build it. You don't have to have the shiniest bells and whistles to make an impact for your team. Rosalind, any thoughts on scalability or starting small?
All the things that you just mentioned, because anything is better than the throw them in the truck and figure it out, right? Or, like Emily was just saying, let them get into the house and then find out. So anything you can do to kind of quantify skill sets and be working through even that 30, 60, 90, ensuring they know your processes and setting them up to be successful is the best place to start because you're going to need that program anyway. It doesn't go away. You're just going to adjust it and improve upon it as you build out these structures. I mean, our first classroom was in the warehouse. There's a little wall with the tankless on it and things you could take apart and do. And that's where it was. Did we have the full program built out the same way? Not at all. And it wasn't until we opened the actual 4,000, 20,000, whatever square foot building, like you said, for the that was us, and filled it through with a platform and a fake house that you could like go in, right? All that great stuff. But the foundations are still the same. They need to know your company. They need to know the skills or the service system, or that your company is relying on to provide that great service. And so start with the foundations.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So this is really Rosalind's bread and butter. So I'm gonna let her start with the recruiting and just finding the right people, and then I'll chime in any thoughts as I think of them.
Awesome. All right. So, the people that are going to be helping with your school are going to look very different. Again, I wish we had the perfect answer, right? This recipe for success. And it's not, because it's going to be different for all of us. We all have different resources and people inside your business. So whether HR takes a primary role, whether it's your service manager, whether it's an outside hire, if you're fortunate to have a learning and development role or a trainer on staff, those positions are are different for all of us, right? And so you're going to have somebody that needs to be kind of that subject matter expert. And then, as well as, like I mentioned, we were fortunate enough to have a retired Marine who then was a school teacher, so retired twice, and then wouldn't stop working. So he was back working again, but teaching our academy, and then also having that instructor that was a skilled technician who had stepped out of the field, had always been really technically sound. And so we utilized two individuals. But then, as Danielle mentioned, you might have that overhead cost of an admin who is helping with recruiting and scheduling and all the things that have to happen on the side. And so consider those factors of what your budget can allow for. But as far as the kind of ideal candidate, as Danielle said, this really opens that net really wide of who you're looking for. And you can really focus on them being a good core value fit and who you want, and leave that technical side out of it. Obviously, we still want individuals who are mechanically inclined and, don't mind getting in crawl spaces and don't mind a little bit of tough work, a little elbow grease. But you can look for those communication skills and really evaluate them from a completely different lens. And you're looking at them because we were able to kind of create career paths for the individual as we got to know them and learn, like, hey, they're going to make a great installer. Hey, they're going to make a great service tech. This person is killing it on the drain machines and just like gets in there. They just get it, right? You can start kind of seeing where they develop. The ones that come in with the gift of gab, they're headed down that salesperson's path for sure. But anyway, it opens that pool and you really get a lot to pick from, particularly your veterans. So much success. Anybody that came in from troops to trades and those kinds of things, fantastic place. Get into your high schools, start talking to them early about what it looks like to join the trades. The counselors are so willing to have you be there at any of their job fairs or, like pep rally things that you can get in front of them. And then that recruiting channel, again, Indeed, great one to hit, get paid to learn, get those out there, 100% get on the social media with this that you are offering to learn, to teach them the trade. And the referral program was great for us, where customers would find out that we had a school and we're like, oh my gosh, my nephew, or my grandson, I didn't know you guys taught the trade. So always make sure that you're internally promoting it as well, that your technicians, get their spiff or a little bonus for getting students in. Pamphlets and flyers, so make sure you leave those behind. So any of those job materials that you have, if you're a folder company, there's a flyer in there that says, learn the trade, and those types of things are really, really great. We always used the recruit to reality model, as Danielle mentioned, is that we are very clear. We come and have them do the ride and decide, spend a day. We want them to know, like, this is what you're getting into. If you thought it was anything else other than dirty, sweaty work, it's not. And we want them to understand that. So setting up that ride and decide program is critical as well.
Yeah, 100%. Rosalind's idea to like leave stuff behind when the customer's asking, like, oh, my grandson or something like that was genius to me. Like, I love that idea so much because it really does happen all the time. I would get phone calls consistently, like, hey, my grandson is really interested. He's going to graduate next year. Or my granddaughter really wants to learn about electrical or whatever it is. So people are looking. And so, yeah, use all of your resources, all of these different channels. For me, I'm a huge, huge fan of Patrick Lencioni. So his book, The Ideal Team Player, if you have not read that, is an incredible one. So I loved it because in my mind, he focuses on the three values of humble, hungry, smart in that book. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, if you are humble, you can work with your peers, you can work with your team. You're hungry, you've got the drive, the competitive kind of edge inside of you. And then if you're smart, smart is people smart. Can you read your customers' needs and provide empathy when needed? And all of these soft skills. I can teach you how to turn a wrench and swing a hammer, but I can't teach you how to be a good person to my customers. You have to already have that. And so that book was really a great guide and mentor for me for finding the right candidates and the right people. All right. So choosing or building the right program in the curriculum. This is my favorite piece. I absolutely love this section, but it can be very overwhelming very quickly. So for me, I like to explain like the three different options that you have from a very high level. And so option one is that you use an existing platform that already exists. So this is something like the Next Tech Academy, SkillCat, Interplay Learning, all of these different LMS platforms that exist. There's no need to recreate the wheel unless you want to recreate the wheel, which is option two. And some people do. And some people are like, well, I want it branded to my company. I want to own the content. I want it to be ours. I want it to be built because how we operate and how the company down the road operates a service call can look very different. We want it to match exactly as our business operates and our business process. And so I love when people want to do that, but I want to be very incredibly transparent. That can be like here, it's a 2-year commitment. You can see on the slide. I have seen people who have this wonderful vision of owning their own curriculum and hire, in-house instructional designers and you outsource, you pay people to build your own curriculum for you. It is such an expansive project, both in cost and in time. It is not something that somebody can say, yep, I've got you everything branded to you. Here's your entire course slide deck. And it's ready to go tomorrow. It just doesn't exist. So I personally like option three, where you're bridging the gap between the online third-party platforms and some of it mixing in your own content. Because I get the question a lot of like, okay, well, if I'm already going to have to outsource the curriculum and I'm already going to have to use a SkillCat or an Interplay or whatever else I choose to use, why do I need, why do I need somebody to guide me through it? Can I just, that is the curriculum? And what I've found personally is that if you log in, there are hundreds of training videos, which is incredible, but you kind of get this decision paralysis. And so it's easier to shut the computer down than it is to say, okay, which video should I watch first? Which one makes the most sense here? What do I need to do between watching video A and video B? I think a lot of people see these platforms as the entire puzzle when really they're just a piece of the puzzle. So I'm a huge, huge advocate for them. I love them. I think they are needed, and I think they are an easy way to prevent you from having to recreate the wheel. But I do think there's some gaps in there, and those gaps are how does your business do it, and what does your business do a little bit differently? So hybriding and mirroring them together is my favorite personal option. Roslyn, do you have any thoughts on like
No,
curriculum?
agreed. Yeah, that's the best model is that ultimately there's something about your company or the way you're doing the work that makes you unique and sets you above. And so you want to ensure that they're learning all of those things and the values and the way that you would like to have. Everybody's service titan works a little different. Everybody's something is doing, everybody's got a little way about it. So just making sure that you kind of build in the, ABC way of doing it is incredibly important, not just relying on those systems that are ultimately just teaching the skill. They're not really teaching the customer experience that you want them to provide.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. Okay, so the field experience. So sometimes people get a little bit confused and they're like they get it's all or nothing. And so when I say that, I think about like the training classroom and lab, if you will. And they're like, well, nothing beats the real world. And they're not going to learn it the same as they would on the job. And I think it's important to know that like this entire experience is a stepping stone experience. It is not all one side or nothing. And so what I like to do is kind of phase the field experience in. And so maybe it's shadowing and ride-alongs with a dedicated field mentor. The major gap that I see a lot of companies miss is that we don't train our trainers. And so bringing in those field mentors, what to expect when you throw somebody in the truck with them, where are they going to be at in their curriculum? What can they do? Are they supposed to bring their own tools or are they supposed to use yours? Are they allowed to talk to the customer or do you have to talk to the customer? So I think it's important to bring your field mentors, your experience techs that are going to be facilitating the ride-alongs, bring them in for training, get everybody on the same page. What does that look like? And then stage two or phase two, I love doing student pairs. If you do like a cohort style group, it kind of what it looked like is okay, I've got 10 students. Well, for 2 weeks, I'm going to pair those 10 students up together. So they're really going to be running, in groups of five or in groups of two. So I've got 5 groups. And so they're going to be running live calls, like they are real maintenance calls. This is just before they graduate, if you will. But two brains are better than one. And so when you first hand them keys, it can be very, very scary. And it's like, oh gosh, I was just, surrounded by my entire cohort. I had my instructor behind me, and now I'm on my own on this little island. So kind of bridging the two together is student pairs. Let a student take lead for the day, but if they get stuck, there's another brain that was in that class that like, oh yeah, no, hey, we're supposed to do this next. Kind of helps ease that transition versus just here's your keys, you got it, friend. And then finally transitioning to independent calls, giving them their own keys. Have you done that graduation checklist? Have you gone out and as their manager or the service manager gone out and watched them do a call to officially graduate them? So I definitely think it's a stepping stone experience. It's not all or nothing. So don't let that hang you up by any means. Roslyn, before I go to the next step, any thoughts on like field experiences in general?
No, well explained. Love the pairing again. Always any of your trainers, I guess, is the one I'll throw in there is that mentors being trained to and understanding that they are, company centric and they want to participate. I will say, when people are like, how did you pay your trainers? Or, how did you even get them to want to train? I'm not going to lie, it ended up being highly sought after to be one of our trainers. And students would graduate and we would allow students to become trainers because they had just gone through the material and then it would help them retain. So as well as like that student pairing that Danielle was talking about, if you had kind of graduated at top of your class, you were invited to be considered to become a trainer for the next round. And again, it was like ended up just being this like highly sought after thing that you had this title of being like, I'm a trainer for the next class. So definitely something to think about.
Yes, I love that. And that just like kind of turned my gears a little bit. So like I talk about succession planning a lot with people and it's like, okay, well, you get all the time like, oh, I'm ready for my promotion. Where's my promotion? I want to be a manager. If you walk into a room of technicians and you say, hey, who here has an end goal of being a manager? Majority will usually raise their hand. Maybe not everybody, but a lot of them are like, yes, I want leadership. That's where I want to grow. And so using that dedicated field mentor as a stepping stone, it's like, hey, this is your pilot, right? Like put your coaching skills into place. Like let's teach you the skills that it takes to be a leader and lead other people. because you got to be patient because they're coming in knowing very, very little. And so all of those skills can also act as a succession plan in your business as you look for future management and future talent. Awesome. So tech readiness, or CSR readiness, or really just graduate readiness, right? Like, how do we know they're ready? I think there's a lot of checks and balances that need to be put into place. You need assessments, you need checklists, you need field mentor signatures and sign-offs, you need certifications like proof of passing an exam. You need all of those puzzle pieces to really know is somebody ready. You can't just give them 100-question written quiz and say, hey, here's your final. Oh, you passed, you're ready for the field. Like, it takes a lot of different moving pieces. So again, making sure that they've got those certifications before you hand them their keys is very important, depending on your trade. And then the weekly skill assessments, I recommend sprinkling them in throughout the entire program. So if you have an 8-week program, then you've got 8 weeks of skill assessments, and you finalize it with that last like big finale, right? Like that last big final assessment at the end, but also including your customer service. So if you're a technician, yes, you have to know the technical skills of how to do the tune-up, but you also need an assessment of role play, which is everybody's favorite, I know. And so having those customer service assessments, like, are they really ready to talk to the customer? Are they ready to do it in the way that our business has it? Whether you have a script or not, you still have expectations for how your customers get treated. So really kind of either shadowing them on a real call or role playing it into some capacity, making sure they're ready. All righty. This is really kind of the last slide. So I love a good Q&A. So I hope you guys have some questions. But I just wanted to talk about kind of like the ROI. Like, is it really worth it? Again, everything you've heard here, at least for both of us, like, I can say that, like, nothing's set in stone. I'm never going to promise anything, but this has just been my personal experience. I wholly, wholly believe in this. And I love when companies decide to make this investment and take the stepping stone. So some of my personal experiences that I've seen different academies do, I've had the privilege of being able to create, I think I'm on like 13 academies so far, which is incredible. I've seen some companies go from like barely trickling in Indeed to postings or Indeed candidates to quite literally 2,000 applicants. Because again, you're opening that candidate pool. I don't care if you already have the technical skills. I'm going to teach them to you. Are you interested in learning? Okay, I want to find the best of the best. So 2,000, from like 5 to 2,000 applicants to choose from. I've seen some companies do a comparison of, okay, I want to see how my graduates are doing in their first 90 days compared to people that we just train on the fly in their first 90 days and compare their KPIs. Some of those KPIs were 300% better. I never saw any of those KPIs of students who went through a program less than those that did not. It was always either on par or better. And then again, on average, an 88% graduation rate. Again, I don't shoot for 100% anymore, just because we probably let a few slip through that probably didn't need to. So an 88% graduation rate is really, really solid average from my experience. So it's something that sets you apart for sure. Rosalind, do you have any like final thoughts? I know, like,
Just some fun facts about, like, don't underestimate the power of like a nephew coming in and trying to beat his uncle's numbers. Like, there are some stuff that those students will come out, and some of them are so hungry. They are guns a-blazing, and they are ready to show up on those leaderboards. And it's incredible to watch and see them climb. And you're just sitting there the whole time like, that's my boy. Your heart is in it. You hire them and you want to call them kids. I'm not, but it feels like it. And you're just like, I want this for you. And you get to watch them grow into these careers. And having sat in the HR seat, watching them apply for houses and things like that, and you're getting the call to verify, and you're just like, oh man, this is just really wonderful. And so a lot of great things come out of the school, other than technicians. I know that's the point, but there's a lot of reward that comes along with it too.
Well, Thank you, ladies. You guys have provided us so many great things to think about, and like you guys have having actually done it both yourselves and your own companies and stuff is truly amazing. You have all the ins and outs. So, guys, if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them down in the chat or come off mute and ask them. But we've helped some clients implement a home service training academy in their own businesses and stuff. And like to me, one of the crucial things is just like the culture element that it builds, the excitement and the camaraderie that can come around it, like making it a big deal, like when they have to like actually apply and they get accepted, and like we're gonna have an actual graduation, we're gonna print out invitations and invite their families, and we're gonna have balloons and celebrating and cheering them on, and like we're gonna invite the local newspaper out to come and do a human interest piece of, so and so just graduated 5 candidates or 100, however many. But like those are all great culture, human interest piece. The community can get behind that and talk about it, create buzz for you. You guys were talking about like leaving flyers with your existing customers and stuff. Like that is social media gold for your own selves to tout and highlight. You can include that in your email newsletter. Like there's so many different ways of how, it doesn't just correlate to the number of graduates. Like that is great and that is a huge piece, but also like it shows how invested you are into the community, into the next generation, the goodness that you're doing by partnering with local schools or however you decide to do it. I think that that culture piece is tremendously, a huge tout to it as well too.
Yeah, great point. The celebration is like I said, so much fun. There's so much more to it. And graduation and cake and the family coming and all those things and the handshakes when they get their trucks and yeah, wonderful. Yeah, that's a
Well, and
great.
I'll know one of our clients, this group I know will appreciate this, but a lady that kind of started off, she started off as a CSR and then kind of worked her way up as much as she could do inside the office. And she's like, I want to do more. Like, what else can I do? And they're like, well, we're opening up our plumbing home service academy. And so she went through the company's home service academy. She was the very first to graduate, the first female plumber that they ever had. And so just a tremendous, I know it's so awesome, so awesome. And so, but how the company was able to create a path for her to continue to grow and stuff. And then, she's learning a new skill as a single mom and stuff. And so 100%, yeah, I know we all are cheering on stories like that and stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but what questions might you guys have? I know I've chatted a little bit. It gets me excited too. And you guys have seen, but what other questions you guys might have?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Um, I am curious. So if you have somebody you kind of mentioned before, like, the 88% graduation rate, and there's probably people you push through that probably shouldn't. How do you determine, or when do you feel like the best time to determine when someone shouldn't continue on? Maybe it's not for them, or maybe you did give them, like they mentioned, like, oh, I do want to be management, but then you have some personality traits that maybe need to be worked on or improved on before they could really like take that path towards management? Do you guys have like a group, or do you just kind of like do you do one-on-one? Like what do you feel like the best way to kind of address those situations are?
Yeah. There's a lot of different things, and that was part of like falling on my face. You have to define like I don't live in the gray area. My brain works very black and white. I've always been a rule follower. And so it's like I need that structure to know, am I following the rules? Am I doing the right thing? And so I kind of took that approach from an academy standpoint. And it's like it was very, very like structured. You get X number of failed attempts on your skill assessment. What happens if you fail? Are you allowed to retest? When do you retest? And so it's those really granular policies that you have to like think of every scenario. And I recommend doing that when you can before you open the doors. But if you have to navigate it through the process, we all got to start somewhere. But having that process in place of like what happens when somebody doesn't pass their test, are you going to let them continue? And it looks a little different for every company and it depends on the business needs. How bad do you need them? But do you really want somebody who's not really qualified and not really ready yet. You know, what kind of effects does that have on the business? For me, like I love data. I don't like subjective feelings. I don't like gut feelings. I want the numbers. I want the data to show me the direction. So I've started building like training dashboards. And so it's like, here is the score. Did they pass or fail? Okay, what does that mean? Have we like I always recommend doing one-on-ones with students while they're in the program and like doing those checkpoints and like, okay, here's where you're at. Here's where your gaps are. Let's close those. Here are some resources to close them. I think a lot of times we go in with the idea of one-on-ones and we say, okay, well, what are you struggling with? And then they tell us, and then we're like, okay, go work on that. And so it's like having some sort of resources there to hand them and say, hey man, I'm really struggling on the soft skills. Oh, we'll check out this book, or oh, we'll try this. And giving them assignments, if you will, has been a game changer for me.
I would say, Renee, my recommendation is finding out that order of operations that needs to happen. So if they absolutely cannot do X, they don't move forward. And so ensure that that is happening or being tested or qualified as early on as possible. And so, for example, we would have the first couple weeks, everybody would work in the warehouse and learn parts, pieces, tools, and show up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And so if you couldn't show up at 6 o'clock in the morning for your warehouse shift, you were fired within days anyway. So attendance right away just knocked you out, and we didn't have to worry about it or, pay for you to go through the program if you couldn't even just show up, right? I'm also a big advocate of which seat of the bus do you belong on. So taking that time that maybe that individual just isn't mastering the skills that they need, but are they a great, people person, and you hired them because they were friendly and personable, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're going to be great. Maybe they're great in the call center and they just weren't meant to do the technical part, right? And so thinking about potential places, maybe they just killed it in the warehouse and you have a spot where they could be doing inventory counts, or they're just really detailed. So always just be thinking about, if it's not here, do I have another seat that they might be right for, before you just move on completely.
Great question, Renee. Anyone else? Well, I know, and you guys shared some, and Roslyn, you even mentioned like they can't drive the truck. I'm like, who would have thought of that? Like you don't think of that being an issue, but what is some of maybe the biggest surprise, or like what you thought when you guys were developing this academy? Like, this is how it's going to be, but maybe you had to pivot, or like, oh, we didn't think about that. What was maybe one of the biggest surprises that each of you guys uncovered as you actually like rolled this out?
That was a big one, the trucks, or the fear. A lot of like the anxiety of doing the work and being left alone to do it, particularly with like, gas, or worried they might flood a home, or having that kind of fear when they first go out on their own. The other thing, so in that same vein, Emily, is doing what's called VOCs, so voice of the customer, and always wanting to make sure that you're making improvements from their view. And so that is where we found out more about, hey, I wish we drove the trucks first. So you're asking them like, hey, what could we have done to change this experience? What would have made it easier? What would have made it better? Hey, doing OSHA in 3 days straight was really like mind-numbing and overwhelming. And you're like, oh, yeah, I guess it would be. Like, I didn't think about that. So again, maybe not as many surprises that we discovered on our own, as much as being willing to get the feedback and being open to knowing that the first couple classes you run are not going to be perfect, nor should they ever be. You want to work in iterations and be constantly making improvements, but be willing to receive feedback and implement it and make sure you actually put it in place. That's the other key.
Yeah. Yeah, I can. So at my time, like the first academy that I was ever a part of, I was there for 7 semesters, or 7 cohorts, if you will. And every single semester looked different than the one before it because of that feedback. And there was so much that we just had to learn and navigate. I will say the most surprising one for me was again, kind of going back to that curriculum. And so, like, hey, we've got this third party platform. Great. I don't have to spend 3 years building PowerPoints. That's is awesome. And so our students would joke, they'd call it like Module Monday. And so it'd be 8 straight hours where they were all expected to bring their own computers and headphones, and they all sat in a room and they had a list of videos that they had to watch or a list of courses they had to complete. And the content was great. So like, again, please don't get like, please know that I love the content. But that methodology was horrific. It was so bad. They hated it. They started calling in on Mondays and then they were behind. So like just putting navigating like, how do I teach this to the group at once versus just relying on this? It's not the entire puzzle. It's a piece of the puzzle. That was probably most surprising for us, for sure.
Great points. And then Renee asked down in the chat, what do you feel the initial cost would be for a company? I know you talked, there's kind of like lots of levels and tiers of how you can get started, but what might be just like the bare minimum? Like, hey, you need at least this, and it would cost you this.
That
I know it's
is
such a
such
nuanced question.
It is such a tough answer. Like even like if we were to jump in chat and like give like even funnel a few questions, I'd be able to give you a better answer. It's so hard because it can range from like how many students are you going to do? Are you going to do cohort style or are you going to do individual timelines? Because that changes the entire trajectory of the program. So I mean, I think you could look anywhere from like a $5,000 investment per student and factoring in their payroll and like what are you going to pay them to again, I've seen $1 million training programs. So I would love to give you a starting price, but I really don't know. There's too many variables.
But that's what, like, I think you do this for people where you can help them. Okay, like, here's what our starting goal would be.
Yeah.
Here's kind of the nuances we need. And then here's like what our initial investment will look. You could probably get a little bit more fine tuned.
Oh,
And then, like,
100%. Yeah,
yeah,
there's like a
yeah,
list of like 15 questions that I start out with. And I'm like, okay, if we can answer these 15 and at least get an idea, boom, we've got a roadmap we can start following. So there's
yeah.
just if you pick option A on this one, you're looking at a different page now. And so it's a choose your own adventure.
Yes. Well, ladies, thank you guys so much for all your insight, your expertise. It gets me excited, and I know several other people. And it's peak of summer, so I know this recording will be watched numerous times later and stuff because so much great information here. But thank you guys for sharing this with us, ladies. You will want to join us next month for our Spotlight series on July 21st. We will have Carrie Kelch from A Plus Garage and Katie Higgins from True Pros. They will be on here sharing a wealth of knowledge, what they are doing in their local community, how they can come together and join forces and really make some good in the trades, but also in their local community. So some great things going on there. And then join us for our Lady Titans Lounge on July 8th. That's where, again, we are solving all the world's problems. And then go ahead and mark your calendars. If you are going to be at Pantheon, we will be having a Lady Titans party opening night, October 5th, the first night. You will not want to miss it. More details to come, but mark your calendars for that. So thank you for joining us today. Happy Tuesday. Roslyn, Danielle, thank you guys so much. Enjoyed having you here, and we will see you guys soon. Bye.